Never pay to watch movies again. Download the app now.
The interesting facts about this movie. In today's video, I am going to tell you. I am also going to give you all the information on which OTT platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production, filming, post-production, budget, box office collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will also give you a small review of the story of this film. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film, storyline, star cast, actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end. So let's start the video. Air Force One is a 1997 American political action thriller film directed and co-produced by Wolfgang Peterson and starring Harrison Ford, Gary Oldman, Glenn Close, Wendy Crewson, Xander Berkeley, William H. Macy, Dean Stockwell, and Paul Guilfoyle. The film was written by Andrew W. Marlowe. It tells the story of a group of terrorists who hijack Air Force One and the president's attempt to rescue everyone on board by retaking his plane. The film was a box office success and received mostly positive critical reviews. It became the fifth highest grossing film of 1997, earning $315.2 million worldwide. It also received 2 Academy Award nominations for Best Sound and Best Film Editing, losing both awards to Titanic. Movie plot. A joint operation between American and Russian special forces captures General Radek, the dictator of a rogue neo-Soviet regime in Kazakhstan that retained its nuclear weapons, threatening war. 3 weeks after the mission, United States President James Marshall attends a diplomatic dinner in Moscow, Russia, during which he praises the operation and insists the United States will no longer negotiate with terrorists. Marshall and his entourage, including his wife Grace and daughter Alice, and several of his cabinet and advisors, prepare to return home on Air Force One. In addition, members of the press have been invited aboard, including 6 Radek loyalists disguised as journalists led by Igor Korshunov. After takeoff, Secret Service agent Gibbs, a mole, enables Korshunov and his men to obtain weapons and storm the plane, killing many of the other security and military personnel before taking the rest hostage, including Grace and Alice. Marshall is raced to an escape pod in the cargo hold while pursued by Korshunov's men, but they are too late to stop the pod from ejecting. Korshunov breaches the cockpit and kills the crew, narrowly preventing the plane from making an emergency landing at Ramstein Air Base in Germany. A squadron of F-15s escort Air Force One as Korshunov has it piloted towards a Radek loyal airbase in Kazakhstan. Unknown to all, Marshall, a veteran of the Vietnam War and a Medal of Honor recipient, had hidden himself in the cargo hold instead of using the pod, and stealthily observes the loyalists. He covertly kills 2 of Korshunov's men and uses a satellite phone to communicate with Vice President Catherine Bennett, letting his staff know he is still alive and aboard the plane. Korshunov, assuming that it is merely a Secret Service agent in the cargo hold, contacts Bennett and demands Radek's release, threatening to kill a hostage every half hour. Marshall unsuccessfully tries to force Korshunov to land by dumping some of the fuel by rewiring the plane's circuitry. Then Marshall and military advisors devise a plan to trick Korshunov to take Air Force One to a lower altitude for a mid-air refueling, buying time for the hostages to parachute safely off the plane. As a KC-10 tanker docks with Air Force One, Marshall helps to capture another loyalist and escorts the hostages to the cargo hold, where the majority parachute to safety. Minutes later, Korshunov and his men discover the deception. Subsequently, a loyalist shoots open the parachute bay door, depressurizing the plane, and prevents Marshall, Chief of Staff Lloyd Shepard, Major Caldwell, and Gibbs from escaping. The induced turbulence severs the connection between the fueling tanker and Air Force One, and the resulting fuel leak ignites, which destroys the tanker. With the president and his family under his control, Korshunov violently berates Marshall for killing his men and forces him to contact Russian President Petrov and arrange for Radek's release. Bennett is urged by Defense Secretary Walter Dean to declare the president incapable under the 25th Amendment, thus overriding Radek's release, but she refuses. While Korshunov and his men celebrate the news of Radek's release, Marshall cuts the tape around his wrists and kills Korshunov and his remaining henchmen. Marshall races back just in time to rescind his order, and Radek is fatally shot when he attempts to escape. Marshall and Caldwell direct the plane back to friendly airspace, but are quickly tailed by a second batch of Radek loyalists in MiG-29s. The F-15s rejoin with Air Force One and engage with the enemy aircraft, but Air Force One suffers severe damage to its fuel tanks, engines, and tail controls from the MiG-29's gunfire, and an explosion from an F-15 when its pilot sacrificed his life to intercept a missile. A standby United States Air Force Special Operations Command MC-130E with the callsign Liberty 24 is called to help, sending parajumpers on tether lines to rescue the survivors. Marshall insists that his family and the injured Shepard be transferred first. When there is time for only one more transfer, Gibbs reveals himself as the traitor, killing Caldwell and the last parajumper. Marshall and Gibbs fight for control of the transfer line. Marshall attaches himself at the last moment. As the MC-130E airmen reel Marshall to safety, the now inoperable Air Force One crashes into the Caspian Sea, killing Gibbs. With Marshall and his family safe, Liberty 24 is given the callsign Air Force One as they fly back to safety. Cast: Harrison Ford as President James Marshall, the popular President of the United States and a family man, who loves his wife, Grace, and daughter, Alice. Marshall is also a decorated helicopter rescue pilot, Vietnam veteran, and Medal of Honor recipient who speaks reasonably fluent Russian. Feigning escape during Air Force One's hijacking, he attempts to retake his aircraft and rescue everyone. Gary Oldman as Igor Korshunov, a ruthless Radek loyalist and terrorist ringleader who leads the hijacking of Air Force One. Korshunov believes that the collapse of the Soviet Union has ruined his country. The character is erroneously named Ivan Korshunov in the end credits. Glenn Close as Vice President Catherine Bennett, the first female Vice President of the United States, who commands the situation in the White House Situation Room. Wendy Crewson as First Lady Grace Marshall. Liesl Matthews as Alice Marshall, States Air Force military aide. Dean Stockwell as Defense Secretary Walter Dean. Elia Baskin as Andrei Kolchak, Korshunov's best friend, trusted lieutenant and pilot. Levin Uchanishvili as Sergei Lensky, Korshunov's henchman and communications expert. David Vadim as Igor Nevsky, Korshunov's henchman. Andrew Ivov as Boris Bazylov, Korshunov's henchman. Ilya Volok as Vladimir Krasin, Korshunov's henchman and close friend, whom he served with in the Soviet-Afghan War. Xander Berkeley as Secret Service Special Agent Gibbs, the head of the Presidential Protective Division and the hijacker's mole. The hijackers never reveal that Gibbs is their inside man. Alan Wolf as Russian President Stolicha Petrov. Tom Everett as National Security Advisor Jack Doherty. Korshunov executes Doherty, the first hostage to die. Yurgen Prochnow as General Ivan Radek, the military dictator of a rogue terrorist regime in Kazakhstan, which has taken possession of stolen former Soviet nuclear weapons, threatening to start a new Cold War. Radek's regime is responsible for the killing of 200,000 people. Captured by a joint Russian-American military team, Radek is imprisoned in Russia, awaiting trial for his crimes against humanity. The terrorists who take over Air Force One demand his release, threatening to kill a hostage every half hour. The character is erroneously named Alexander Radek by the end credits. Donna Bullock as Deputy Press Secretary Melanie Mitchell. Korshunov executes Melanie, the second hostage to die. Michael Ray Miller as Colonel Axelrod, United States Air Force, pilot of Air Force One. Carl Weintraub as Lieutenant Colonel Ingraham, United States Air Force, co-pilot of Air Force One. Spencer Garrett as White House aide Thomas Lee. Bill Smitrovich as General William Northwood, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Glenn Morshower as United States Secret Service Agent Walters. David Janopoulos as United States Secret Service Agent Johnson. Dan Shore as Notre Dame aide. Philip Baker Hall as Attorney General Andrew Ward. Richard Doyle as Colonel Bob Jackson, United States Air Force One backup pilot. Willard Pugh as White House Communications Officer. Diana Bellamy as White House Switchboard Operator Pannonites.